Hey everybody, Dean Sweetman here, along with Frank Barry. Mate, how you doing?
Hey, doing awesome. Having a good day. It is it's raining in San Diego, so
It's raining in Los Angeles. Not good, although we need it. So
we
we
need
get
it all
about
day.
10 days a year of rain. It's all good. We'll muddle through.
We can manage. That's right.
Yeah,
Nobody knows how to
yeah,
drive out here when it rains,
yeah,
but we're getting
yeah,
by.
yeah. Absolutely. So man, we got a great show today, and we've been having some phenomenal shows, and it's
Yeah.
really we get lots of great feedback, and people are loving the content that we're putting out on the show. He's a guest, but he's also a mate of ours, and we've got to know each other, through different circles around Christian entrepreneurship and communications and all that stuff. Great guy called Kenny Jahng, and we want to get Kenny in the mix here. Kenny, how you
Kenny's
doing?
on.
Hey, welcome or thank you, or I'm just excited to be with you guys wherever you guys are.
We're excited to have you on, man.
We need to know if it's raining where you're at, because it's raining where we're at.
No,
so.
it's not. It is not raining, but it's like 19 degrees and it's cold. So
that's not cool.
I don't know what it is, but I just feel like, sometimes you look out, it's sunny, you think it's nice and warm, you might put on some shorts or something, you go out, it's like frigid. It's like one of those things.
Yep. Understood. Well, it's like 55 here and raining, so can't complain, and we need it.
Cool beans. So, Kenny, can we just begin just telling our audience a little bit about you, what you do? You're involved in a lot of great stuff around the kind of faith space, entrepreneur space. So give us a little background on Kenny Jahng.
But see, you say a lot of stuff, and our team's doing the research, prepping for the show, and one of our guys is like, "Man, I don't exactly know what Kenny does. He does so many things."
Right.
So you got to help us hone it in right now.
Well, it is kind of like sometimes your mom doesn't know what you do, right? It's like he does all this like computer, internet, dot stuff. Well, so here's the Cliff Note version. I run a digital agency called Big Click Syndicate. We help cause-driven nonprofits and faith-based organizations with storytelling, positioning, content marketing, everything digital. And then outside of that, I've got a heart and passion for the giving and generosity of our culture in the church that started largely because of traveling with my kids with sports, right? Like in suburbia America, travel sports is the thing, right? So you're on the road every single week.
Right.
And we're visiting these churches and you see the offering plate get passed and they expect you to have a check. And I'm like, I don't have a check on me, and even cash. I don't have that much cash. It's embarrassing to my kids because we don't have anything to give. And so, okay, let's give online, and they don't have anything online. They don't have texting. Like, there's so many churches out there over this last several years that we've been traveling. And then you see that their budget obviously aren't being met, right? And the dire straits of the churches. And so that's where the heart came from. It's like, look. I think this is a communications thing. This is a messaging thing. You apply some technology, and a lot of these communities can be thriving and vibrant, and they just need help with the funding of their mission. And so I started a little thing called Generosity Labs, which I'm trying to basically be like an educational clearinghouse, a safe space where giving people encouragements and some tools to help with that generosity and giving culture thing that so many churches have yet to figure out and just need a little helping hand here and there. And so that's why I love you guys and all the tools that you guys have been bringing to the table to equip the local church. I think that's one of the reasons why we intersect so much, because your heart and vision is where mine is. And let's do this thing, right? Equip the church in North America.
100%. I mean,
there's so much, right?
Yeah, well, we're a marriage made in heaven because our passions are very intertwined, both on the education side of things, helping churches understand, and then on the technology side, obviously that's what we do day to day. Let's go a little deeper, with some of these thoughts, because we get a lot of kind of in talking to our customers, our thousands of customers every week. We get. When we talk to churches, they're looking for help, and it's like, okay, here's some text giving numbers, here's some website code, here's a mobile app. We love building all that stuff.
As soon as you said code, it was over at that moment.
Yeah, you had me at code. And so we love doing all that. But one of the things that, really what we're about, and this is in your wheelhouse, is how do you get church giving to increase, right? Yeah. How does giving go up? And the technology is one thing, but there's so many other components to it. Give us your kind of 30,000 kind of foot view down on the whole concept of increasing giving in a local church.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the history of the churchgoer, where it's been obligation-based, guilt-based. It's been lack of communication, lack of messaging, lack of transparency. And I think you got to skew the other way. And I think more importantly, you need to win over the hearts and minds of the people in your community and say, come on board and join us. Let's do something together. And so one of the things I usually say is, like, every church needs a cause. We've gone to the point where the local church is just very inward focused, very selfish. They just want money for themselves. And why should I give money so that you, pastor, could buy a new car for yourself or buy something for yourself and not help the community, especially in this day and age where you're talking about millennials, you're talking about Gen Z, you're talking about people that that we're bombarded with messages that this next generation wants significance and meaning in everything that we do. It's not just work, it's not just play, our faith life too.
Yep.
Why can't you hear that, church? Oh, church, please listen to us.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the first part is. It's not about these tactics. It's strategically, does your church care about anything other than yourself?
Right.
And I think you can start locally, you can start globally, you can start partnerships with other nonprofits and organizations in your community that are doing great things for others. Let's start with the other.
Yeah.
That's read the book, right? And so why don't we put that out in the church?
That whole subject is very fascinating. I'm a boomer, so I'm that kind of general, but I like to think I'm, in tune with what's going on down the generational line. And
you're a millennial in a boomer body. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe the other way around. But the whole rise of the cause, right? Through social media, Facebook, everybody's got a cause. There's a whole place where you can go, the GoFundMe phenomenon, where strangers are giving to causes. And, I did a little video thing, the other day. It's like, there's a good opportunity if you've got a local cause that you can get up on a Sunday and take an offering, and literally there's a really good opportunity you're going to raise a lot of money, because there's this thing that the marketplace is kind of educating people on, is this instant give to the cause. And that's obviously a demographic thing into that millennial age group.
And you know what? At the very end of the day, I'm optimistic about humanity and the people in our communities.
Amen.
People are good. People are generous. People want to help.
Yep.
And if you facilitate that and give them an easy on-ramp to help somebody make a difference, they'll jump on board.
Right.
It's not hard. You just need to let them have access to be a part of that story.
Yeah. What have you seen? So you've been traveling around because of kids' sports. So you visit, I see you on Facebook and Instagram here and there, right? You're visiting a lot of different churches, which is kind of a unique experience. Like, not a lot of people go visit a bunch of different churches and kind of get the experience and see what they're doing, right? So you just have maybe more experience in seeing different churches than most people. So what have you seen in this vein of like having a cause? Or not having a cause, maybe in the other churches, like the downside of it, but what have you seen working really well?
Yeah, what's interesting is you see, first of all, I think I'm teaching my kids, this is unintentional, but you see the beauty of Jesus's church, because there's so many different ways to worship, but we're all in the same family together. Yeah. And so that's the first, the diversity of styles and how we express that love and exalting God, I think, is just really interesting. The same thing goes with how they tell what their community does or what they stand for. Some, it's in the preaching. It literally is part of the lifeblood of what the meaning of that pastor's role and job is. And he's telling stories about, how he was out in the community talking to, Betty from this organization or was at this hospice, et cetera. So sometimes it's from the preaching. Sometimes it's compartmentalized into stories, right, at the offering time. Sometimes it's disjointed and they just don't know how to connect the dots. So I think there's completely a wide range. One of the things that I think we see that they get it and they understand is those that actually spend time during offering to talk not about themselves. And it's so simple. But the offering time is the most strategic part of your worship service that is forgotten by most pastors on a weekly basis.
I agree.
So, I think those are the ones that stand out. When they actually are intentional during that offertory, those are the ones that stand out.
Yeah.
So you talk a little bit about in that moment the power of telling stories. Can we kind of expand a little bit on that? That's a big passion of ours too. Always, finding that story, whether it's in the community, that something that you've done as a church, something within the church that nobody really knew about, but the church did something great. Those stories are powerful and they move people to connect with the church's vision.
Absolutely. It's we always say it, show, not tell.
Yeah.
So don't just tell your people to be generous. Show them how it's actually being carried out. Mm-hmm. So I think that your church should be able to source at least one story a week. And sometimes they're small. Yep. And it might be just a personal interaction. And sometimes it might be grand. It might be a big project and campaign that you guys carried out. It's huge as a community. But every single week telling a story, it's the same thing as, if you tell people they need to get baptized, they need to get baptized versus having someone who got baptized tell them the story of what life was like before Christ, what it was like after Christ.
Very good.
It's much more powerful, much more convincing, much more of, I want some of that. And so same thing, it's this generosity. I will tell you in the generosity portion, it's so easy to get people to open up their checkbooks if you're just sharing the right stories.
Mm.
How do you get those stories? We've had this conversation because we did a survey. We surveyed over 1,000 church leaders, and one of the questions was, how often do you use stories in your preaching? And I forget the response, but it was low. It was under 5. Out of 10,
I think it was in the 3s, 3 out of 10.
It was it was one of the lower responses, right? So it just tells us, of the survey results, those particular church leaders weren't using storytelling as part of the offering in a big way.
It's the most forgotten part of the church service, right?
I think it's also hard, right? Like telling stories, because you said it's like you can be small or it can be grand and it can be anywhere in between. But I think figuring out how to source those stories so that I can weave them in is probably something that pastors, church leaders aren't thinking about or don't know how to do. So what have you seen work, or do you have any ideas around how to source good stories?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very intimidating for a lot of people. And they think it's grandiose. You have to have this like Hollywood, and even pastors. We go to seminary. We're trained with the Lowry loop, and you need to have this perfect arc of narrative, etc. It doesn't need to be that complicated. I think it really is. And the first place I would start, honestly, is I would survey the congregation. I would ask, crowdsource. I'd say, we're looking for stories of generosity. We're looking for stories and glimpses of examples of someone doing a little bit more for someone else than for themselves, right? The you greater than me. That's all we're trying to find. And I guarantee you, your people will come out and just ask, how is our church generous? Can you give some examples that inspired you? I think that's the first place to start. Ask your community. You don't need to be the one that has all the answers. You're here to facilitate the conversation with your community. But again, I think you're looking to catch really small examples of good behavior. That's basically what it is, right? Yeah. And so it might be we had some family friends that lost their stuff in a storm, right? The Jersey Shore, there's hurricanes and stuff like that, and then you see the stories where you're donating close to families and stuff like that. and everyone, they need to donate toys to the kids. And our kids, like probably most kids, have more toys than they can handle, right? Almost every child that we know probably has more toys than they need at any given time. So why don't we donate some toys? And looking at some of the kids, their hearts are so pure. There's an example where the toys that were selected to give to a family was the best toys, not the crappy ones. And so often as adults, we try to measure and figure out what is a good balance of giving to those that are lesser than us. And you see the purity of kids' decisions of giving their best stuff because they want to be generous. Sharing that and showing that and then relating it to what Jesus teaches us and what he's given to us is basically connecting those dots. And that's a simple thing. And I think that's powerful. That will catch someone that day that needs to hear that, to move them to say, yes, this is part of my spiritual discipline. This is a part of my spiritual DNA that I'm going to give a little more. Even topics like, I will tell you, tipping, right? Tipping at a restaurant always is this. Everyone has an opinion about tipping. Yet sometimes there will be people in the conversation that just get you that says that $1 extra that shows the generosity for that person. That
100%.
It doesn't mean that much to me. But for some people, that 50 extra cents, rounding up, that 1 extra percent or 2% makes you stand out and really honors them. As a Christian, we want to witness that repeatedly. Just stuff like that, really, those types of conversations that are every day, everyone can relate to it.
Right.
You're starting to have conversations about it in your homes after the service. That's what you do during offering time.
You've unearthed something, back in my past life when I was pastoring. I saw some terrible examples of Christians going to restaurants, not tipping great or, small or not at all, but leaving hey, come to church next Sunday, note.
Yes.
It's like, are you out of your mind?
Yes.
I pretty much had a standing rule that if you're going to visit restaurants that surrounded our church, because I made it a point to go and meet every manager
Absolutely.
of every restaurant, right? And I said, if you turn up there and you say from our church and you're not tipping big, you need to keep your mouth shut.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's
church policy.
100%.
Look, your reputation precedes you.
Right.
And as a Christian, or more, like you said, as a member of our community, we want our identity to be known as a generous folk.
Right.
And so how do you live that out? And even proposing that question to the people during offering time, saying that's what we want to do. What are those examples? That's something you should think about. Let me know during this week what your thoughts are. And as you think about that, here's the offering plate for this week. Think about the sacrifice that, to take your own son and put him on the cross and make him die for somebody else, not even someone in your own family. Think about that generosity. Think about the small sacrifice it is to put that extra dollar bill in the offering plate, etc. Those are the types of those conversation starters you want to have during offering time. That's where you're not feeling, as a pastor or as a church leader, that the guilt, overwhelming guilt. I don't want to talk about money in front of people. I don't want to talk about obligation. You know what? This explicitly is the time in the service that's written for that. It's like we're talking about money. That's literally what we should talk about it. So let's get the conversation going in the church.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
What do you see? So on this topic of storytelling, just because it's, you're in the communications world, right? Helping churches and nonprofits and ministries. So communications is something you spend a lot of time on. What have you seen go wrong, right? Or churches not do well when it comes to storytelling? And then we can follow it up with maybe how do you do it well? And you've been around, so maybe you've seen some examples of wow, this is just a bad way to do this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, at least from our creative team, when we're doing videos or other types of stories, typically we want to be gospel infused. Gospel is equated at least with hope on our team. Mm-hmm. And so typically you don't want to go in with something that's guilt-led, leading with guilt, or something, like showing the evil side of things and saying, and fear-based, right?
Right.
Saying that if you don't give today, this child is going to die today.
Right.
Typically, I think usually you have other outlets and other ways to tell the story that's much more gospel-centric and more hope-driven. So I think that's the biggest mistake that I think a lot of churches might do in their storytelling, is that it tries to drive with guilt or fear. And we should be known for hope. And uplifting things. And even when there is a dire need, even where your emergency funding is something that you really need in a dire, right? You can frame it in a way, I believe, that connects the positive outcome, the hope, the place that you want to go, not the place where you came from.
Fantastic. Really, really good.
Makes sense?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, you mentioned something a couple of questions ago about smaller churches. And, we love serving churches of every size. We've got, tens, thousands, like we've got them all. But I always like to speak to that under 200, that under 250 church. Yeah. Sometimes they can feel a little under-resourced with some of the things that we talk about. But, what we're talking about today is very simple. Things like going to your congregation, doesn't matter how big it is, finding those stories, getting embedded in your community, finding out the needs of the community, bringing those needs into the church, talking about how the church can get involved. You're not precluded as a small church from doing any of this, right?
Absolutely not. This is why I think many times in all these media and publications in our church industry, it is a lot of products and services out there assume that you have big media budgets and large teams, and that you even have more than one pastor in the building, right? A lot of ministries are solo pastor. You're a MacGyver, right?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
MacGyver. Do anything and everything, and you got to figure out how to make things work. And I think the hope there, I think, is that you don't need all this fancy schmancy, lights and all, technology and all this kind of stuff. There's so many things out there available to you that are, and again, it comes down to messaging. Communications and messaging is what people need to be inspired to open up their hearts. It's a heart issue. It's not a technology issue. It's not a budget issue. It's not a gadget issue. It's a heart issue. The only way you're going to get into someone's heart is through words, concepts, and embracing of support.
I mean, I think people, to that point, I mean, like people respond to like other people's heart change and like the sort of vulnerability and the authenticity of what somebody's sharing. So you could literally just have a person on the stage during the offering that has their own great story or their own great family. But if it's real and it comes out, even if it's messy and not polished and all this kind of stuff, like the people sitting there listening will pick up on the heart all day long, right? And that's going to move people.
Here's the bad news, though. People, it's exactly what you're saying. You have to be real about it. People know instantly if you, as the church leader, are really real itself. Are you just saying from the pulpit and from the microphone, or does your life really count? Like one of the biggest rules in fundraising is, especially when you have these personal fundraising campaigns like the GoFundMe and all that kind of stuff, are you personally donating to your own campaign, or are you just asking everyone else to open up their pocketbook and I don't need to do it because I'm special? I hate giving to someone's campaign where they're not contributing at all to their own mission trip. Right. And then they're asking everyone
first donor, right? They should be listed as the first donor on the donor list.
Yes.
See the person doing the fundraising.
Yes. And not only that, making sure that you give something. Again, most giving campaigns, it's not about the amount. It's about participation.
Right.
It's about telling someone, I support you. And I might not be able to be the biggest donor, but I support you. I'll give you $5. Even $5 typically will make a huge difference in your relationship, in encouragement, and in propelling them forward to be able to find other people to give as well. And so be that cheerleader. You don't need to empty your pockets, but you need to have a heart that's genuine in trying to give and support as many people as possible.
Fantastic.
Again, that's bad news because there are many church leaders out there who are trying to preach it, but they don't live it out themselves. And so
you're right. People they pick up on it instantly, right? So you can see fake, when it's not authentic, when it's not real, when the person talking about giving isn't really living it, it doesn't come across out. If it's not from their heart, people will pick up on it in 10 seconds.
They pick it, and you and I both have met church leaders, pastors, Christians who are just giving of themselves, right? You've met generous people. They just give away anything, everything. They're cooking for you. Anything mine is yours. They're people that live out acts like for truth, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to do with those people? You want to give them back more. You want to help if they ever, right? Those are the people where you'll wake up the whole town and say, this person needs something, and everyone will jump. There are people like that. So how do you, on a daily basis, how do we become one click closer to that type of personality persona? How do we live that out? It's hard. It's hard. But
that's why it's more blessed.
If you're like that, you'll bring people with you, basically.
That's why it's more blessed to give than receive, because in the act of giving, all you're doing is attracting more blessing into your life. And, that's a biblical fact and a fact that I think we've all seen lived out, on so many levels.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, right? It's a personal challenge. I don't think any of us can say that we've conquered that or that I have a lot more to do on that side. But when you find someone like that, and if your leader is like that, you're signing up for them and doing anything that person, he or she wants you to do, you're there with them. That's the easiest way. You don't need technology. You don't need huge budgets. You just need that authentic heart. That's how you lead people.
Yep. Amen. Maybe switching gears a little bit and just kind of still on the increased giving thing. Do you think it's important for church leaders to understand what's going on behind the scenes in the giving inside church life?
I don't know if this is a big thing or not, but it's a recurring topic. And I'm part of this pastors group that meets once a month for lunch in Jersey. We all get together at a diner, take the same table, have these conversations, and we talk shop. And that giving conversation comes up. Some of these pastors have no clue what any of their people are giving.
Yep.
And they say, I've got a sense of who's a bigger giver than another, but they have no clue. Some know exactly, and they get reports of everybody's giving. And it's not like an audit, but it's just
awareness.
It allows them to have conversations. It allows them to honor high capacity givers. And more so, you'll see some of these pastors say, it allows me to detect when something is up. That if you have a heart issue, if you have a sin issue, if you have a lifestyle change or something, usually one of the first indicators is money.
Every time.
And so that using that as an early detection system allows you to at least raise a yellow flag, pay attention a little bit more, come a little bit closer into their orbit and see if something's going on, and address that. Finances is a spiritual discipline.
Oh my gosh, it's a window in, no question. I think, I think you said something really important. It's not, you're not got any judgment, and this goes to amounts and all this kind of stuff. I was a big proponent in knowing the donors in the church for many of the reasons you just said. But it's an ability to be able to look at that. So, you put your business hat on, which I know a lot of pastors hate. I never had trouble doing that, because if you're going to grow a church, you're going to buy land, build buildings, deal with banks, raise money in a multi-million-dollar kind of level, you got to have some business brains going on. And, for a business leader not to know where the income is coming from, you kind of think about any business where the guy who's driving that business doesn't know where the money's coming from, he's not going to be in business very long. So there's some practical things, but, definitely being able to honor, certain people. And there are business people in the church that feel like God has called them to that's their gift. Their gift is giving. God's given them an ability to create wealth, and they want to give it. And kind of being confident enough in your own skin as a pastor to be able to, take those guys for breakfast and get to know about their business, so you know how to pray for their business and just building that relationship. I mean, if you're not doing that, I think you're missing out.
And let me tell you, it's not about just looking at the top half of the list.
Absolutely.
It's not looking at everybody. And there's two things that we say that you want for encouragement. You need recognition and you need appreciation. Those are the two different things. Recognition and appreciation, they're very separate.
Yep.
And you want to be able to appreciate them. That's when you directly let them know that you're paying attention, that you see what's happening, and that it makes a difference, and you're giving that feedback loop. Recognition is different than appreciation. Recognition is public, and it takes on different other factors, and that may or may not happen in your community. But one of the things that you do want to do with donors is appreciation. That's why you want, and it's not just the personal touch, it's the first time giving receipt, but also the notes, the second time giver, the quarterly statements, the annual vision meetings, to let them know you're stewarding their donation, their hard-earned dollar, whether they give $50 a year, $5,000 a year, or $50,000 a year. You want them to know they made the right decision. I think there's so many missed opportunities for ministries that say, oh, we need to build this data breach protection system between the pastor and the finance team. I think it's sad because, again, looking at it from a scarcity perspective, not an abundance perspective.
I've seen what's interesting with churches are nonprofits, obviously very different universe, but I guess by law nonprofits. But in the nonprofit, like the traditional nonprofit world, knowing your donors is a massive part of the operation, right? It's you know who your major donors.
It's the whole thing.
The whole thing is like giving appreciation and recognition and knowing your donors. And for the major donor segment, you might have to show appreciation in a different way to that group versus the new donor segment or whatever, right? So they really dig into this and understand it, and it's something that maybe some churches are good at and others aren't. One example that I heard of recently was a church that they sort of fully embrace this, and they have a whole ministry for like executive. Oftentimes, if you're in business and you're performing well and you're sort of executive level or C-level, you actually want to connect with other people like that. It's like any other ministry, right? If I'm a single mom, I want a single mom's ministry because I want to be able to connect with other single moms and get that support and encouragement. But you don't see this kind of purposefully created ministry around business kind of people, right? But I guarantee you that church that does that ministry is very successful because those people want to be together, and you've now created a group for me, right? And they're shameless about when it's time to raise money, they go to that group, and that group knows they're coming. The group knows they're coming, right? It's just part of the makeup, but it's not to treat them differently. It's to give them a ministry that they can connect with and talk about their stuff too. So
it's allowing them to serve and express their gifts in a way for the church.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, that's just one example that I've seen in a church that I was like, wow, they've embraced it and gone even next level with how they make it part of the church.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, there's so many creative ways that you can start. So any church that has, put up their arms and given up, I think we can easily start the conversation and say, incremental gains. Let's start with one little thing at a time and see if we can turn things around and encourage you. You need encouragement as a ministry itself. And that's why tools like the tools that you guys are providing on the technology side allows the staff and the teams to not pay attention to some of the back end and the administrative, et cetera, so that you can focus more on relationship building and cultivating of culture and really casting vision. I think that's the best way of using technology, especially in a community like a church, for giving.
100%. So, mate, kind of as we wrap a little bit, want to finish with just some encouragement from you to church leaders who just feel timid about this whole giving thing. And we talk about this a lot because we know it's an issue. And I love to get every guest, kind of feedback that I can around how do we encourage pastors, church leaders who are just feeling, this is not their thing. They're not sure how bold they can be. Just talk to that church leader who's going to be listening today and encourage them and give them a couple pointers on how they can really take a forward move when it comes to generosity and boldness.
Yeah. So first thing I'm going to put out there is you're not alone.
Amen.
And it's okay to feel that way. There's a lot of other people in those same circumstances. The second thing is even bigger, is that it doesn't need to be that way. There is a story for your ministry, for your community, for your ecosystem that is a quite different story. And in our culture, in our country, in today's times, fortunes change very rapidly if things happen for the right reason. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways that you can find support and encouragement is talking to other people that are in your circumstances, people that have been in your circumstances. And one of the best ways is you guys have a vibrant Facebook community. Yeah. I think it's brilliant, right? It's a place that they can get some almost medical help, specialty help if they need to.
Triage.
Get a back rub from a friend, it's the mix of everything in that community where you don't need to be shy, you don't need to be sheepish. You can raise your hand and say, look, we've been failing at giving this year, or we're under budget by 15%. What can we do? Help me brainstorm. These are the friends that are willing to help. If you're willing to help someone else brainstorm and be the sounding board or encourage somebody or keep someone accountable, if you're willing to just do just a little bit of that, you will get 10x, 100x back by joining the Facebook group that you guys have. That's the community. That's the number one thing I would say is that if you're not part of that group, become a part of the group. If you're part of the group, just be a little bit more active, encourage. People need encouragement more than you think. And the smallest little things that you can do in that group, whether it's just liking other people's stuff or giving feedback or giving a version of your experience, that is the best. Don't be a lurker. Social media is supposed to be social for a reason.
Very good.
And Frank and Dean, they're in the group, and we have a lot of fun, right? We go back and forth.
Absolutely.
That's the number one thing that you can do is to get to know the team here, but also get to know everyone else in the community.
I love it.
Love it.
So maybe I'm misstepping here. Do you have to be a customer to be in that group?
You don't necessarily have to. I would bet that 99% of people in there are customers because that's how they find it, right? They find it through sort of becoming a customer and then jumping in and interacting with other people.
Well, it's almost like a secret weapon for those customers. And if you're not a customer, this is how you gain access to it for free, right? Become a part of that community. You'll see time and time again of the stories of churches and ministries incrementally gaining ground against this obstacle that might be in front of you right now. Again, you don't have to do it alone. There's so many other people that are willing to stand with you and encourage you. Please don't waste another day, another week don't go through another Sunday where you're not optimistic about the offering time. You should not do that. Don't give up another Sunday. Be a part of the community. That's my number one.
Love it.
I love it, mate.
Very good. Well, I think that's a wrap. We don't want to keep people for too much longer, but Kenny, super appreciate having you around, man, and all your wisdom and insight. I'm sure we could talk for another hour about all kinds of things.
We can figure it out. But and I love you guys. You guys are doing such great work for the kingdom. Really, really thankful that you guys have come on the scene and taken that posture of generosity as it being applied to the kingdom.
Yeah. Amen, man. Well, it's a calling for us too. So, hey, good to chat, and man, we need to hang out face to face soon. I don't know, we'll run into you somewhere.
I'll take you up on that anytime.
All right. God bless, mate.
Thanks, Kenny. See ya.
Wow, that was awesome. I love it. He's got his heart for God and his heart for the church. It just overflows. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a super generous guy himself, right? So he lives it out.
Big spirit. I'm pretty excited about what's coming up next week, Frank. We've got who I think, and I'm a little biased because he works in Tithely. He heads up all the development side for our custom apps. A guy called John Holtkamp, who I met. It got to be nearly 3 years ago now. And anyway, through a series of beautiful things, ended up coming and is doing some great work for us. And we're gonna go deep on the benefits of custom church apps, and it's gonna be fascinating.
It's gonna be a good show.
I think there'll be some show and tell, and he might kind of show some really cool things that the way apps can really help churches and so on. So that's coming up next week, and can't wait for that.
It may not be next week, but I know it's coming up. So for sure, that show's on the books. It will be coming, just so no one gets confused.
Yep.
But it's going to be a good one. So talking about engagement, using church apps to engage your church. John he's an animal. He lives and breathes this stuff. So we're probably not going to talk much, and we're just going to let him go.
Sounds good to me. All right, everybody. God bless. Phenomenal show. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.